Hello, Fáilte. Hello, everybody. You're welcome to Mythical Ireland Book Talk. I'm Anthony Murphy. This is the Mythical Ireland Library on Laurelin Show. Nonawa, August, Céad Míle Fáilte, Macharja Galéir. Good evening and 100,000 welcomes, all my friends. Our Fud on Dowan from around the world. It's lovely to have you once again in Teach Mhorchu, Laurelin Mhorchu. I hope that you're all keeping safe and well. I also hope that you've been enjoying our extra episodes now on a slightly different but related theme. We're talking about books. We're talking about books that are related to all the themes we explore in Live Irish Myths. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll consider this to have been a weird idea at the end of it. You know, in the future, I'll probably look back and say, I wonder, was that such a good idea to do a book talk series in parallel with Live Irish Myths, given that so much of the Live Irish Myths series involves reading from books. Anyway, it is what it is. It's an idea. Welcome, everybody, on YouTube this evening, watching Mandy McCurl, who's just across the way, across the sea, says it's absolutely pelting outside, perfectly atmospheric for the start of Samhain, and good stories by the fireside. Mandy, it's always a pleasure to have you by our virtual fireside. Daisy Peter says she's really sad today because at this time she's working and won't be able to participate in the chat. But I said I'd say hello, Daisy, so that when she's watching the rerun later on, she'll get her wave and maybe wave back. Gillian Stapleton is on YouTube. Hello, Gillian. Trinona Wakonasata too. Janet Moran is in the house. Hi, Anthony on the tour. I've been binging Mythflix today. Great stuff, to use your phrase. Delighted to hear it, Janet. Hope you can navigate all the hellos and all of the introductions. Stephen Walker is in the house. Hello, Stephen. Cheers, everyone from Atlanta. Fáilte Roat. Stephen, you're welcome. Anne Sieben says hello from Denver. Hello, Anne. Great to see you in the house. James Bagby says good evening from a cool, raining Irish day in Nashville. Yeah, well, we had an okay day. I mean, it was bright, breezy, dry, mainly. Angie Gross is in the house. Hello, Angie. Brilliant stuff. And on Facebook, there's a few in the house. Louise Sherrill says, hello, you. Hi, Louise. Linda Moore is in the house. Greetings, Sláinte. Angel Barboni Smith is here. It says, hey, with stars and a moon, suitable symbols for Mythical Ireland. I think you'll agree. Angel, you're very welcome along. Charlie Grover says, fortune. Interesting. Hello, Charlie. Kathy May Deo says, oh, what a nice surprise on my lunch break. Hello, Mr. Anthony. And you see, Kathy May, I timed it precisely so that it would coincide exactly with your lunch break. Of course I did. Serena Swift says, hello all. Fáilte, Serena. Judy McQueen is in the house. Hello, Judy. Grania Vic Loughlin is waving. Giaglich Grania. Federica Guy is in the house. Fáilte, Federica. Lovely to see you. Hope you're keeping safe and well. Joe Butler says, hello, book talk. Hooray. Sure, look, what else would there be to talk about except for the weather, you know? Pauline Rice is in the house. Hello, Pauline. Cy B is here. Says good evening from a wet Limerick. Actually, let me just quickly check the meteorological situation. I'd see there are showers around, all right. I think we've avoided most of them so far. Neil Hughes, Trinonawa from Coatbridge, Scotland, made this one, so really pleased. Mary, get the Fiam Auguste, quick, go toppy. Mary, good evening to you as well. Does he not get his own Fiam? Or does he not make your tea for you? Tom King is in the house. Good evening, Anthony and the lovely Tua. Great having story time while working away. Great to know that you're working away while listening to the stories, Tom. Your work is inspiring. Marie Lendon says, hello, everyone. Giaglich Marie Fáilte. Connie Keeler says, good afternoon from Ontario in Canada. Hello, Connie. Welcome along. Darren Egan says, good evening. Trinonawat. Darren. Serena Swift, not in my part of Washington. Glad you can see the sun, though. Enjoy. I'll do my best. Mona Andrist says, greetings. Sláinte, Mona. Barb Jordan says, hi, everyone. Giaglich, Barb. Joe Barrett says, hi from Australia. A very good Thursday morning to you in Australia, Joe, from us, well, from me anyway, here on Wednesday evening in the Boyne Valley. Oh, excuse me, pardon me. Desiree Riley. Hi, everyone. I just got a knock at the door with the most wonderful surprise. My copy of Island of the Setting Sun. Yay! I'm delighted to hear that it has arrived, Desiree. Brilliant. You will get lost within the covers of that book, I'm sure, and enjoy it immensely. I hope you do. Anne McCallum says, hello, Anthony and the mighty Tua. Cool but lovely and sunny today. I've been sizing up my house, trying to find a place for more bookshelves. A woman after my own heart, Anne. There you go. Susan Mullen Lacerna. We haven't seen you in a while, Susan. It's great to see you back. Hello, a nice fall day in Raleigh, North Carolina. Hello to Susan. Fáilte. And Patricia Wardell says, from La Bella Trieste. Ciao. Fáilte, Patricia. Great to have you in the house. Who else have we got? And Merritt Braun says, hello from Switzerland, everybody. Another name that we haven't seen in a while. It's delightful to see some of you back. It's great. Sandrine. Is it Sandrine or Sandrine? I say it's Sandrine because that sounds a little bit French. Hello from France in lockdown again. But sure, look, we're all in it together, Sandrine. I think everywhere's locked down at the moment. But no worries. Anthony's there to entertain our cold, lonely evenings. Bonsoir, mon ami. Seamus Mara says, well, Anthony and Clan, how's yous Newry calling? Newry, Ireland, on your, named after the yew tree, which we did an episode on recently of Live Irish Myths. James Bagby, what is thank you in the old language? Goromahagut is the easiest way to say thank you, James. Goromahagut. Janet Moran is saying hello to Merritt, which is brilliant. Angie Gross, books rule, computers drool. Well, I work with computers. I do prefer. I do love. I have a thing for the printed material, you know. Margaret Sullivan Lee says, "Sweet home, Chicago." Hello, Margaret. Fáilte. Anyway, so this evening we are delving into the library, and so I want to full disclosure here. Okay, total honesty. So I haven't done any preparation for this episode. What I did was earlier, I was thinking about doing an episode yesterday, but there was a lot of other stuff going on. So I said, no, look, I'll leave it for tonight. I'll do one tomorrow night. So today I was sitting there, I was going, what am I going to talk about tonight? And I just swept my eye along the shelves, as you do. And I was like, just pick something. I was like, I saw the spine and I said, Celtic, Archaeology and Celtic Myth. And I was like, do you know what? This is a good one. This is a good one to do an episode on. So with the zero preparation, we are going to talk about John Waddell's Archaeology and Celtic Myth. That's how it happens. It's a lottery. It's Forrest Gump. Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. You know, I should do a whole spin the chair thing here, you know, with my finger extended and just see where I land, you know. It's like, okay, kissing the hag. There you go. There's the next one. Sorry, I'm getting giddy. I'll calm down now. Margaret Kiernan is in the house and says, good night all. Ikawa. Niamh Smith is in the house also, saying, evening everyone. Trinonawat, Niamh, lovely to see you. Yes, so with zero preparation. Now, it's not, that's probably not true to say. I can't say zero preparation. I have read this book and it is wonderful. But I need to kind of introduce it right a little bit, just completely off the cuff, without having taken any preparatory notes or anything like that. Dolmac McDermott is in the house. Top fan +1, it says. Lol, sweet pea. Hello, Dolmac. So, how often in life do you encounter somebody who strays way out of their comfort zone to talk about something that is not in their academic purview? There's a question. Barbara Murphy's in the house, looking forward to archaeology. Barbara, I'm always saying it. It's a great pleasure to welcome another Murphy into the Murphy household. Did you know, and I'm sure most of you do, Murphy is the most common surname in Ireland. So there's more of us than anyone else, unfortunately for you. Ralph Waldron, badly needed on damp, dark evenings like these. Well, it helps to have a good library, definitely. Samantha Healy says, good evening, Anthony. Hello, all. Dear Tua. Fáilte, Samantha. So, I hope that question has kind of set up some interesting thoughts in your heads, you know. So, those of you who've had a chance to read Island of the Setting Sun or my Mythical Ireland book, or even Newgrange, but more so Island of the Setting Sun and Mythical Ireland, you will know that they are sort of cross-discipline works. They are works that look at archaeological evidence, mythological evidence, and astronomical evidence. Shane Broderick is in the house. Hello, Shane. Fáilte. It's a case sometimes with these disciplines that never the twain shall meet. So there are some really brilliant archaeologists in Ireland. Too many, actually, to name. We have a serious amount of extremely well-trained, extremely experienced professors and doctors and people with lots of letters after their name in the archaeological sphere. Patricia Patsy O'Malley Boyd is saying, hi everyone. Sláinte, Patricia. Banachty. We also have a serious amount of very learned, very well respected scholars in the area of mythology and folklore and medieval studies. To a much lesser extent, I think, in Ireland, correct me if I'm wrong, we have academically trained astronomers. There aren't very many of them. We have a couple of big names, as it were, well-known names in the field of archaeoastronomy. And you see a lot of, in archaeological texts, in papers and books, you see a lot of footnotes and references to the work of other archaeologists. The same goes for people who are writing about mythology and folklore. You'll see a lot of references to the work of other scholars. In the field of archaeoastronomy, because there are only a couple of people who are sort of, as it were, well-known and suitably qualified in that discipline, matters of archaeoastronomy tend to get referred to a certain couple of individuals. But when it comes to crossing disciplines, how many archaeologists are there who are also very well read in Irish medieval texts and manuscripts in the mythology and folklore of the country? That is an interesting question. I suspect that they're in a small minority. I could be mistaken, but I think by and large, if you were to approach an archaeologist who's undertaking a dig or some research and say to them, what do you think about this myth? They might say, well, I'm not familiar with it. You'd want to talk to so-and-so who's more familiar with this kind of stuff. Wendy Holmes says, hello, everyone. And Sandra Boothroyd is also in the house. Fáilte. And I think I think you have to be a very special type of academic polymath to be disciplined in many things. So I do want to single out one in particular, one person who was very well versed in a lot of disciplines was the late Professor Frank Mitchell. He lived locally here along the Boyne Valley at Townley Hall. And Professor George Ogan, who excavated Douth, I think was a student of Professor Mitchell's and was a good friend of his. Mitchell was an anthropologist and an archaeologist and a geologist. He was many things, one of those rare geniuses. Didn't know him myself, but I know people who knew him, and they have a lot of very nice things to say about him. Anyway, back to the original question, which is, How far, okay, maybe this is a reframing of the question. How far out of your depth would you dare to go as a scholar into an area in which you haven't got training and into which your knowledge is perhaps lacking? And the reason I ask that is because this evening is about the book Archaeology and Celtic Myth by Professor John Waddell. Professor John Waddell is Emeritus Professor of Archaeology in the National University of Ireland, Galway. That's NUI Galway. Now, this was published in originally 2014 and paperback reprint 2015. I couldn't be entirely sure. Please accept my apologies in advance if any of this is mistaken. I am not sure what Professor Waddell's current status is, if he's still Professor Emeritus or if he's retired or what. I don't know. But, oh yeah, Jim Conway makes a very interesting point there. He says, I found Dr. Ned Kelly to be very knowledgeable and very approachable. Do you know, this is a funny thing, but I don't know, because of conspiracy theories and because of, well, there has been a little bit of a movement all over the Western world towards or against scholarship and against academia, and a sort of an almost paranoia that everyone in archaeology and everyone in astronomy and everyone in all the branches of science are somehow keeping secrets from us and putting out false information. I personally know quite a number of archaeologists, and some of them I consider to be among my good friends. So there you go. A lot of them are very approachable and very amenable to disseminating the information that they know. They're brilliant. So Waddell, I'll have to read the introduction to kind of give you a sort of a better indication of exactly what I'm talking about when somebody goes out of their purview, the purview of their own discipline, as it were. So this is the blurb on the back of the book. Many people are familiar with the Irish archaeological landscapes of Newgrange and the Boyne Valley, and the royal sites of Rathcroghan in County Roscommon, Navan in County Armagh, otherwise known as Owenmacha, and Tara in County Meath. Several of those, especially the Boyne Valley and Tara, we have spoken lots and lots and lots about in our Live Irish Myth series. In this book, John Waddell focuses on aspects of the mythology associated with these places, demonstrating that elements of pre-Christian Celtic myth preserved in medieval Irish literature shed light on older traditions and beliefs, not just in Ireland, but elsewhere in Europe as well. Their mythological associations permit the exploration of the archaeological implications of several mythic themes, namely sacral kingship, a sovereignty goddess, solar cosmology, and the perception of the other world. So just let me reread a little bit of that again. Their mythological associations permit the exploration of the archaeological implications of several mythic themes. The archaeological implications of mythic themes. So there you go. That's where we're going tonight. Eva Anderson says, hello everyone. Fáilte Eva. Paula Snow Queen is in the house and waving. Hello, Paula. And on YouTube, have we caught up? Paul Garron is saying good evening from the hangar. Not Rath To Cundan Nami. Toshe in San Och Uber. He is in his workplace. Janet says she's enjoying a glass of Chardonnay, but at home, not in the drinking houses. Guess what episode I watched last? Drinking houses. Oh, yeah, you'll have to remind me. Anyway, let's do a little bit of reading. So at the end of the discussion, the book, Professor Waddell did a series of lectures based on each chapter of this book. They are available on YouTube. So what I suggest, if you're interested in the subject matter, definitely go and watch those. I know that those videos were shared in the Mythical Ireland community on Facebook some time ago, several months ago, and a lot of people derived a lot of pleasure from them. I think you will too. So definitely, when we finished, well, obviously, I would encourage you all to buy the book, definitely, but also definitely watch the series of lectures, which are in essence a summary of what's in the book. Margaret McKenna is in the house. Hi there. Actually able to tune in live for a change. Hello, Margaret. It was very nice to meet you at Lough Crew last Thursday, when I was filming with Discovery Channel, the subject of which I cannot discuss, but it was a great pleasure to see a familiar face. Marie Cronin says, hello, Tua. I'm delighted to be here. A very welcome distraction from my day. Well, we're delighted to have you along, Marie, and hopefully you make yourself comfortable. Linda Moore says, NUI Galway webpage states, John Waddell is former Professor of Archaeology and head of the department. Yeah, not sure now what his exact status is, but that would seem to indicate that he may be retired. And this is from the preface. I'll read a little bit of this, and then I'm going to read a little bit from the chapter about the Boyne Valley. When Stuart Piggott published his Ancient Europe in 1965, he described this monumental survey of European prehistory from the beginnings of agriculture to classical antiquity as a personal estimate of certain factors that, in his opinion, had contributed to the character of the ancient world that lay behind early historical Europe. This was a study based on the Rhind lectures 3 years before, and in it he argued that medieval and modern Europe was not wholly the product of Roman tradition. The essential rural economy of what was to become historical Europe had, he suggested, roots that struck very deep in prehistoric antiquity. Laura Puente is in the house, a tad late, but happy to join everyone today. Sure, we're only getting warmed up, Laura. Grab yourself a seat there and a dram or a brew. Make yourself comfortable around a virtual, warm, crackling fire. Innovation and radical change were exceptional. The conservatism of barbarian Europe, as he called it, led to the preservation of accustomed modes and the retention and transmission of tradition down the generations. It is fair to say that his model of innovating and conserving societies was very much in the cultural historical tradition of the time, but as Richard Bradley has observed, it anticipated some of the ideas of interest in contemporary archaeology. However, Piggott's notion of the retention and transmission of tradition, not just over centuries, but over millennia, is well worth examining. This question inevitably arises in a study that attempts to correlate archaeology and myth. Burr Whelan is in the house. Burr, it's lovely to see you, and thank you very much for your comprehensive list of Live Irish Myths episodes, which I shared the other day and which was very gratefully received. Anne Hurley, he says, just had a brew, wished it was a dram. The question inevitably arises in a study that attempts to correlate archaeology and myth. For myth was a feature of all societies, and as we shall see, early Irish myth was a preeminent medium for the transmission of cosmographic beliefs and concepts of kingship. So this very, very bold start here. Wait till you hear this. I think this is one of the things. I don't know Professor Waddell, but this endeared me to him no end. If I ever meet him, COVID notwithstanding, I will shake his hand and tell him what a pleasure it has been to encounter his work. This study is an exploration, and its central premise is that elements of pre-Christian Celtic myth preserved in medieval Irish literature shed light on older traditions, not just in Ireland, but elsewhere in Europe as well. Brilliant. Yes, Carmel Flahavan points out that emeritus can mean retired, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Yep, absolutely. Professor emeritus and pastor emeritus in the church. And even we have in Rome, we have a Pope emeritus. There you go. Thank you for that. Mariana Dunn is late joining and says, hello, everyone. Fáilte, Mariana, great to see you. Barbara Kling is in the house. in a rainy and cold Vermont. Well, wrap yourself up and make yourself warm. Imagine that virtual crackling fire that we keep talking about. Now, here we go. This is the brilliant bit. As an archaeologist with no expertise in the study of myth and a complete deficiency in Old and Middle Irish, I am very conscious of the dangers and difficulties of this sort of exercise. This is exactly pertaining to the very first question I asked tonight. How far out of the purview of your own academic sphere would you be willing to tread, looking over your shoulder to see the scoffing and studious expressions on the faces of your peers? In my defense, however, says Professor Waddell in his preface, I call Karl Valentin. He was one of the leading comedians in Weimar, Germany, and one of his stage sketches showed him searching for his house keys in a pool of light cast by a street lamp. A policeman comes to his aid and eventually asks the worried Valentin where exactly he had lost his keys. He points to a dark corner of the stage, and when asked why he has not searched there, he replies, "There's no light over there." This anecdote was recounted some 50 years ago by the Welsh scholar Alwyn Rees. We met Alwyn and Brinley Rees when we did our book talk on Celtic heritage, which was either episode 3 or episode 4, just a couple of episodes back. In a spirited defense of the far-ranging study of comparative mythology, and he thought it an apt illustration of an academic unwillingness to explore beyond the circle of light of one's own discipline. So immediately, as soon as I read this, I was like, I'm liking this John Waddell fella straight away. Really, he's warmed my heart immediately. It is true in these post-processual times that transdisciplinary studies are now far commoner. Of course, in Rees's day and in Pigot's day, they would have been ahead of their time in this regard, and certainly going against the grain when introducing the idea of mythological study into the study of archaeology. Much interesting work on archaeology and myth has been done in Scandinavia in recent decades, for instance. But the risks of venturing well outside one's area of expertise have not diminished. The many references to the scholarly contributions of acknowledged specialists in other fields are just one indication of my debt to them. Excuse me. This inquiry mainly focuses on aspects of the mythology associated with 4 well-known Irish archaeological landscapes: Newgrange and the Boyne Valley, Brú na Bóinne, the royal sites of Rathcroghan in County Roscommon, Navan or Owen Macha in County Armagh, and Tara or Chower in County Meath. Ironically, the archaeological and mythological importance of the Navan and Tara landscapes failed to afford them much protection from officially sanctioned vandalism and destruction in recent decades. In the 1980s, extensive limestone quarrying near Navan Fort endangered the environs of that famous monument. While the fort itself was a protected site, the landscape had no protection. At one point, a 30-metre quarry face encroached to within some 40 metres of the enclosure bank. Despite concerns, quarrying was allowed to continue in 1984 with the tacit support of the Planning Service and the Historic Monuments Branch of Northern Ireland's Department of the Environment. And where have we seen this at play again recently? Knock Ivy, where a telecommunications mast was planted in the ground close to a Neolithic cairn without planning permission. A 22-day-long planning inquiry then found in favour of the quarry owner, but the exceptional level of public protest eventually forced the London government to refuse planning consent. Anyway, not to get bogged down in the introduction, I want tonight to talk about the chapter that he calls The Otherworld Hall on the Boyne. And so let's have a look at some of what John Waddell has to say about the mythic dimension. So he gives an introduction to the monuments, and Newgrange specifically talks about O'Kelly, the solar alignment and the excavation, the size and weight of the cairn, the stones, etc., etc., etc. So we're not going to repeat that tonight because I think we have covered that in several episodes of Live Irish Myths. Amelia Hubbard says, really glad to finally be tuning in from California. Degrees in anthropology and love folklore/mythology. Brilliant stuff, Amelia. You're very welcome along to Mythical Ireland Book Talk. And yeah, sit down and make yourself comfortable. Janet Moran says it was episode number 35. So there you go. Thank you for that. Sylvia Sanchez says, hiya. Hello, Sylvia. Sandy McNabb says they would sell their grannies for a fast book. Of course they would. Jody Thompson says, hi, Jody from Kerry. Hello, Jody and Kerry from Anthony in County Louth. Conde Lou. The mythic dimension is the part that I was interested in. When he published his account of the 1962 to 75 excavations in 1982, O'Kelly entitled his book Newgrange, Archaeology, Art and Legend. Let's have a look at that very briefly. And there's the subject of at least one, if not several, Book Talk episodes. Professor O'Kelly's book, with that wonderful photo taken from the rear of the chamber, showing the triple spiral and the chamber and the entrance to the passage, or the part at least where the passage meets the chamber. And in a 6-page chapter, he felt obliged to address the fact that Newgrange and the other great tombs of the Boyne complex featured prominently in early Irish mythology. One of the facts that endears me to Professor O'Kelly, who I never knew. I think he died actually in 1982. He died within a short time of the book being published. As he noted, medieval tradition recorded that Brú na Bóinne, the otherworld mansion or hall of the Boyne, was the dwelling place of the Tuatha De Danann, the people of the goddess Danu, including the great god Dagda and his son Angus. It was also appropriated by the early kings of Tara as the supposed burial place of their pagan ancestors. The Dagda and Angus are both alluded to in Tuchmarc Etain, the wooing of Etain, which we have done several episodes on also. What is the quickest way of getting the list of episodes up? I can scroll back through the posts on the Mythical Ireland community, I suppose, or I could open up, I just can't remember immediately offhand where I saved the document. I pasted it into a Word document when Jer sent me the email the other day. Can I find it now that I really need it quickly? No. Right. Let's do it the other way. Apologies. Live TV. This is live TV when you don't have assistants to do these things for you. You have to do them yourselves. Live Irish Myths list. Here we go. So what were we talking about? Tuchmarc Etain. The wooing of Etain was episodes 21 and 22 of Live Irish Myths. If you're not familiar with those, there's a few new faces here tonight. So if you're not familiar with Live Irish Myths, you'll find all of them on the Mythical Ireland YouTube channel. And that's easy to find. Some of you are probably watching on YouTube. It's youtube.com/Mythical Ireland. Sorry, the Dagda and Angus are both alluded to in Tuchmarc Etain, the wooing of Etain, in which it is said that the Brú belonged to Elkmar, who was married to Boann, the goddess of the River Boyne. O'Kelly thought it possible that Newgrange's association with the chief of the gods and his son was one reason for the enduring sanctity of the monument and its focus as an offering place in Roman times. He wondered if there was any connection between one of the traditional attributes of the Dagda as a sun god, as asserted by scholars such as T.F. O'Reilly, and the yearly visitation of the sun to the tomb. By the way, let's follow the sources when we can. T.F. O'Reilly, I think his best known, or certainly his most referred to work, is Early Irish History and Mythology. Yes, I think that's a reprint. Yes, it was first published in 1946. Dublin Institute for Advanced Studies. Early Irish History and Mythology, T.F. O'Reilly. Definitely another one that should be on your bookshelf. And there's another episode of Book Talk sometime down the line. And the yearly visitation of the sun to the tomb. This is something I have written about at length, as many of you will know. In my blog, I've discussed it in videos, and I've also mentioned it in my Mythical Ireland book. I think that is not a coincidence, by the way. Dagda has solar attributes and is seen to control the crops and the harvest. And he is the builder and first owner of Newgrange in some of the myths. And he makes the sun stand still in the heavens while he mates with Boyne. He's basically, I mean, you can see it as a copulation between the sky and the earth, between the sun and the mound, which is very organic and uterine in shape. He has nothing to say about the mythology associated with the River Boyne, and it is surely here that the Newgrange story begins. Though often described as a cemetery, the Bend of the Boyne is more than a collection of individual tombs. It is well known that the building of prehistoric monuments established or enhanced the importance of particular locations and created a new sense of order in the landscape. A cluster of small tombs at Douth and a small tomb to the west of Newgrange may mark the beginning of small-scale monument construction in the bend of the river and in sympathy with the terrain. A later phase witnessed the emergence of the huge and complex tombs at Newgrange, Douth and Douth with a greater interest in display and visibility in both art and architecture. So I'm just letting you know, I knew there was something wrong. The comments have stopped scrolling on the phone, but I see there are new comments. And I see Vicky Wallace is in the house. And oh, yes. Vicky and Evan are carving pumpkins today, which sounds very exciting. Well, hello to you and welcome along. And hello, Evan and Chili, of course. I can only see the latest 4 messages on the computer. Sylvia Sanchez says, happy to be here. I caught it this time. Well, we're delighted to have you along. The great tombs now dominated the area and became the focal monuments for other small tombs and for ceremonial activities that ordered space, time, and mind. Okay. I'm going to skip a little bit here. Large circular enclosures, like a great earthwork just east of Douth, that's the site Q or the Douth Henge, and various monuments in the vicinity of Newgrange demonstrate the continued importance of this sacred landscape to at least the end of the 3rd millennium BC. And of course, Waddell was writing before the discoveries of 2018, in which a smattering of more giant monuments were added to that assembly. Discovered in the drought. While the modest early tombs effectively sanctified the landscape, it is possible that it was the river itself that first made this part of the Boyne Valley consecrated ground. I'm inclined to agree with Waddell's contention there. The river's mythical beginnings are surprising. The Prose den Shanachas records the creation of the river at its source at the Well of Necton near Carberry Hill in County Kildare. And that's another one we can refer back to. We spoke about Boyne in episode 16, and we spoke about the mythical origins of the Boyne River and Necton's Well. That's episode 16 of Live Irish Myths, where the Boyne has a prominent part in the initiation of a mythopoetic process. And he gives the early Irish version, and I'm going to give you the English version. Boand, wife of Necton, son of Lowry, L-A-B, or a Lowry, went to the secret well which was in the green of She Necton. Whoever went to it could not come from it without his 2 eyes bursting, unless it were Necton himself and his 3 cupbearers, whose names were Flesk and Laum and Luam. Once upon a time, Boand went through pride to test the well's power and declared that it had no secret force which could shatter her form. And thrice she walked withershins around the well. Withershins, anti-sunwise, what we call tuhal, jeshel being sunwise or clockwise, tuhal or Withershins. I think that can be pronounced Withers, and I think it can also be spelled. It can also be spelled Widder, Withershins. I'm not entirely sure, but I think so. Whereupon 3 waves from the well break over her and deprive her of a thigh and one of her hands and one of her eyes. Then she, fleeing her shame, turns seaward with the water behind her as far as Boyne mouth, where she was drowned. Now she was the mother of Angus, son of the Dagda. Here we have, this is Waddell speaking, here we have the tale of the imprudent visit to the forbidden well by Boand, the wife of the god Necton, who 3 times fails to make the auspicious sunwise circuit, moving instead counterclockwise around it. As a result, she suffers grievously for her curiosity. 3 great waves erupt from the well, depriving her of an eye, a thigh, and a hand. She flees and is drowned at the mouth of the Boyne River that is formed by this cataclysmic event. 2 explanations are given for the name of the holy river. However, in one, it is named after the river goddess Boand herself, and in another, after the conjunction of the rivers Bow and Find. As McCona has written, I think that's Prunchus McCona, whose book on Celtic mythology is on the shelf there. The generation of variants like this is a characteristic feature of myth, where different accounts may confirm and complement rather than contradict one another. In a longer version of the 11th century metrical Dunshanicus, parts of the river are given 15 different names, and clearly influenced by Christian monastic learning, refer to a very recent episode of Live Irish Myths, refer to episode 119 of Live Irish Myths, and that is Scribes, Kings, and Manuscripts. The Boyne flows to join the Severn, the Tiber, the Jordan, and others, becoming part of the great universal river that ultimately reaches the paradise of Adam. A similar explanation about the origins of the river Shannon in the prose Dunshanicus seems to be borrowed from that of the Boyne. The great scholar of comparative mythology, Georges Dumézil, identified a relationship between the Boyne story and the myth of Apam-Napat in Indo-Iranian tradition. He was struck by such parallels at either extreme of the Indo-European world, a situation that appeared to exclude any possibility of horizontal transmission. While aspects of Dumézil's work are debated, it is widely accepted that there are common traits to be found in many Indo-European mythologies. In the Rig Veda, Apam-Napat is a water divinity who emits a brilliant burning force. In short, he is associated with fire and water. In the Iranian Avesta, he has similar associations as guardian of a lake containing the Zvarna, a brilliant light of glory that is a symbol of royal power. Various attempts to seize this forbidden prize cause the lake to overflow, creating a number of rivers, one of which continues to preserve the divine light. Extraordinary stuff. While the Irish tale contains no mention of a fiery essence in Necton's well, Dumézil claimed that there must have been some such force to burst a wrongdoer's eyes. Patrick Ford then ingeniously proposed that this force was the illuminating brilliance of wisdom. He cites several instances where wells are described as a source of knowledge, including a tract in which the waters of Segish had a hazel tree growing above them. And again, this is something we have spoken about in many episodes. The nut that fell therein furnished mastery of poetry to whoever drank there. And Segish is another name for the part of the Boyne that flows from the well of Necton. Thus, there are several common themes in the Indo-Iranian and Irish traditions. These include a burning or brilliant element hidden in waters. This constituent is attainable only by those who are qualified. It is forbidden to those who are not. 3 attempts are made to retrieve the Zvarna, and Boan circles the well 3 times in an inauspicious direction, and illegitimate attempts to retrieve the element result in the overflowing of the waters. James Bagby is saying, yes, I've seen Widdershins, W-I-D-D, yes. Yeah, I'm sure I've seen it. And I think actually maybe, yes, Wither, W-I-T-H-E-R, I'm thinking. I think the word in Irish is tuhal. I'm not sure if Widdershins is an English word. I'm not sure if it has I'm not sure if, yes, I'm not sure. So basically that's why I'm blathering like an idiot. Sorry, I'll stop now. If it seems likely, the story of the origins of the Boyne is part of an Indo-European tradition, then the sanctity of the river and a particular association with secret knowledge is of great antiquity. I'm really, really liking John Waddell. The very name, probably originally Bouvinda, B-O-U-V-I-N-D-A, is thought to mean cow-white goddess. And a similar compound occurs in Sanskrit as Govinda, G-O-V-I-N-D-A, reflecting the prestige of cattle in both Indian and Irish tradition. Now, I may be preempting something here, but do you remember when we did the episodes on Altram Chia Gaveder, the fosterage of the house of the 2 drinking vessels? Or did we do? We did, didn't we? Yes, we did. Episodes 83 and 84. Altram Chia Gaveder. There was word there that, wasn't it, Manannán had brought 2 sacred cows from India to Sheed and Broga, to Newgrange. That's one we'll have to go back to in light of this. While the bovine component is not in doubt, it has been proposed that vind derives from an Indo-European form meaning knowledge or discovery. Fascinating stuff. The Boyne's connection with the attainment of knowledge is echoed in Fenian tradition in the tale of Finn MacCool's acquisition of the skills of healing and poetry from the salmon of knowledge that was to be found in a pool in the river. Newman has indicated that the name Nechtern may be linked with the river Neath, N-I-T-H, a river that springs from a well on Tara. Though the etymology is obscure and debated, as Dumézil and others have said, both Neath and Nechtern may have Indo-European roots derived from Neigw-T- Sanskrit Nikta, Nikta, which means washed or purified. Old Irish Necht, or from Indo-European new, meaning new, vigorous, fresh. Fascinating stuff. Margaret Kiernan says Vindaloo. You get enlightenment from your curry. You eat a curry and suddenly you'll be a poet. O'Kelly briefly alluded to the fact that the Dagda and Angus are 2 divine personages associated with Newgrange. Carey, in an innovative study, that's John Carey, we've mentioned him in a few episodes of Live Irish Myth, in an innovative study correlating archaeology and myth, has explored some of the textual references that touch on Brú na Bóinne, and undoubtedly that is his brilliant paper, which is called Time, Memory, and the Boyne Necropolis. I think that's available to download on the internet, from the Proceedings of the Harvard Celtic Colloquium, 1990. Very well worth a read. In a short tale entitled The Gawal int Shida, The Taking of the Otherworld Mound, the Dagda, the good god, also called Yochi ol Ahar, Yochi the Great Father, distributes the Otherworld mounds among his followers. He gives a mound called Sheed Sheed, excuse the pronunciation, Sheed Roruvan to Lou, for instance, but keeps several, including Newgrange, for himself. He gives nothing to his son Angus, the Machog, or the young son, who seeks a dwelling of his own. Angus is granted a night and a day in the brew, but takes possession of it, declaring, quote, "Night and day are the whole world, and that is what has been given to me," unquote. And we've explored that, haven't we, in a number of episodes. In the 12th century Book of Leinster, the events are described as follows. There was a famous king over the Tuatha Dé in Ireland. His name was Dagon, which is a corruption of Dagda, D-A-G-A for the N. Great then was his power, even though it belonged to the Macmilad after the conquest of the country, that is, the sons of Meal. For the Tuatha Dé destroyed the corn and milk round about the Macmilad until they made friendship with the Dagda. Afterwards, he saved their corn and milk. In other words, the Milesians had a tough time planting crops because the Tuatha Dé, and especially Dagda, who's the sun god, funnily enough, were making things a little bit difficult for them. Now, when he was king at first, his might was vast, and it was he who apportioned out the fairy mounds to the men of the Tuatha Dé, namely Lugh mac Ethland in She Rodruvaun and Ogma in She Arkeltri. But for the Dagda himself, She Lachtmaya, E Ashid, Knuch and Bru Ruhr, as, however, they say, he had Sheed in Broga from the beginning. In other words, Newgrange was the Dagdas from the very start, according to the Book of Leinster. Then Mach-Og came to the Dagda, that's his son, in order to petition for land after it had been distributed to each one. He was, moreover, a fosterling to Midger of Briley and to Nindid the seer. "I have none for thee," said the Dagda. "I have completed the division." And this is the Gawal in Shida, the taking of the other world mount. "Therefore let be granted to me," said the Machog, "even a day and a night in thine own dwelling." That was then given to him. "Go now to thy following," said the Dagda, "since thou hast consumed thy allotted time." This is a very archaic English translation. "It is clear," said he, "that night and day are, in brackets, the length of, close brackets, the whole world, and it is that which has been given to me." In other words, night and day make up all of time, and therefore you have granted me Sheed and Broga for all of time, which is essentially what Angus Og was saying to his daddy, the Dagda. Whereupon the Dagda went out, and the Mach-Og remained in his Sheed. Wonderful, moreover, is that land. 3 trees with fruit are there always, and a pig eternally alive, and a roasted swine, and a vessel with marvellous liquor, and never do they all decrease. Sounds like a wonderful place, doesn't it? Sounds like a typical Irish pub, really, doesn't it? With a pig on a spit. Don't know how many Irish pubs have pigs on spits. And this is all pre-COVID, of course. All the pubs are closed at the moment. A version of how Angus gained possession of the brew is also told in Tuch Marc Etain, the Wooing of Etain, perhaps first written in the 9th century. Here we learn that he was conceived by the Dagda with the goddess Boand, also known as Ethne, who was the wife of a certain Elkmar, and that Angus was conceived and born in the one day. He was, quote, "begotten at the break of day and born betwixt it and the evening," unquote. In Tuch Marc Etain, Elkmar, another name for Nechtan, occupies the brew, and the Dagda tells Angus how to deceive him into yielding possession. He is to seek kingship for a day and a night in the brew, but this is to mean for all eternity, for, quote, "it is in days and nights that the world is spent," unquote. Elkmar is tricked in this fashion and has to move to another otherworld mound at nearby Cletchich, somewhere on the Boyne. In the 3rd tale, Altram Chia Gawvather, the fosterage of the house of the 2 methers, or drinking vessels, communal drinking vessels actually, Angus gains the brew by placing Elkmar under an enchantment that will last until the end of time. Quote, "until heaven and earth are mingled together, until the sun and moon are mingled together," unquote. As Carey demonstrates, these 3 versions share a common theme. Angus wins the brew through the power of the word, through verbal dexterity or magic, which significantly involves the manipulation of time. Douth too has its mythological associations, including an allusion in a 12th century bardic poem where the cave of Douth is instanced as an entrance to the other world, to Awan Aulach, the Arthurian Avalon. A statement in the metrical Dindshenachus declares that this was the hill of Boyne, the burial place of one of the wives of the great god Lu. We also covered the mythology of Douth in an episode of Live Irish Myths. Yes, the mythology of Douth and Douth were discussed in episode 25 of Live Irish Myths. Her name may be derived from Buvya, B-U-V-Y-A, meaning the cow-like one. O'Cahacy has gathered some disparate strands of evidence in early literature to argue that this Bui is a manifestation of the goddess of sovereignty, the personification of the land and its fertility, and the source of the power of sacral kingship. How are we doing for time? Oh, we're okay yet. Well, I'm sure half of you are asleep at this stage. Hello from Colorado. Terilyn Zacharias is in the house. Falcha, and good evening to you. You're very welcome along to Book Talk. Tonight, we are in John Waddell's Archaeology and Celtic Myth, a wonderful book. Douth, known in early literature as both Doa and She Mresel, the other word mount of Bresel, features in Tuchmark Emera, the wooing of Emer, where the warrior Cuchulainn travels, quote, between the god and his prophet, unquote, that is, between Mach Og y Sheath in Broga, Newgrange, and She Mresel, Douth. In the metrical Dindshenachus, this Bresel is credited with the building of the great tumulus, and once again the manipulation of time occurs. His sister casts a spell that fixes the sun in the sky so that a day might last indefinitely and allow the task to be completed. Bresel lustfully commits incest with her, reference the episodes about incest in Irish mythology, particularly episode 98, Major New Revelations about Newgrange, and can't find it. We did, didn't we? Or did I? It is certainly the subject of a long read post on the Mythical Ireland blog, which is titled Newgrange and Inbreeding, 3 Ancient Myths About the Monuments of Brunabonia Refer to Occurrences of Incest. So I'm going to paste that in. You can perhaps something to browse after we're finished. I'm sure some of you have seen that already, but I'll paste it in. Neil Hughes wants to know if we didn't manipulate time last weekend. Yes, we certainly did. While we tricked ourselves into the idea or the notion that we had by putting the clocks back by an hour. Yeah. Daniel Burgess says, greetings from New Mexico. Really enjoying the reading. Thank you. Thanks, Daniel. Glad you're enjoying it. Daisy Peters is back in the house. So you finished work, Daisy. It's good to see you. Polar Bear says, greetings from New Mexico. Enjoying the reading. Thank you. You're very welcome along. And thank you for the nice comment. Of course, it's my pleasure. Where was I? So they commit incest. The spell is broken and the sun departs. Since the construction work has been darkened, Ro Doa, Doa darkness shall be the name of this place forever, declares the myth. It is a remarkable coincidence, as Carey says, that these legends should reflect control over time and that archaeological excavation has revealed solar ritual at Newgrange. What Waddell doesn't mention, does he, is that there's solar ritual at Douth as well, because Douth's southern chamber is flooded by light on the winter solstice, something that if you were watching my live stream from Douth a couple of days ago, you might have seen. And the sun during my time there hadn't quite spilled over the Sillstone. Like O'Kelly, he notes that they raise the question whether tales recorded in medieval times might echo the beliefs of Neolithic tomb builders millennia before, something that followers of Mythical Ireland will know is something that I've been saying for a long time, and it's good to hear the scholars also saying it. It is difficult for the modern mind to grasp the impact the appearance of the solstice sun must have had for those who witnessed it. For the prehistoric spectator, this was the rebirth of the sun. the equivalent of the resurrection for the medieval Christian, and a mystical happening of such significance that it too should be recounted generation after generation. There is evidence that Newgrange was the location of occult practices in the 11th century AD, when the monument was probably a place of ritual and myth-telling. Its associated myths may have been retold, reshaped, and developed over many generations, but retained the fundamentally important elements that reflected its sacred beginnings. And here is a paragraph that I have highlighted and written NB beside. So obviously this is going to be spectacularly good, I imagine. I've got the comments going again. Sharon Murray says she can't wait to visit Newgrange. Brilliant. You'll enjoy it, definitely. Shiana Rafferty Hansen says, hi from West Virginia. By God. Hello, Shanna. Lexi Erickson says, I loved visiting Newgrange last year and supposed to be there this year. Sigh. Hoping for next autumn. This is all just excellent. Glad you're enjoying it, Lexi. Good to see you. Todd Despera is in the house on YouTube. Hello, Todd. Good evening. Sláinte. So NB highlighted paragraph. The longevity of potent myths anchored to a monument like Newgrange need not surprise. Enduring monuments like this could well be the focus for the preservation of remnants of the beliefs of a pre-literate society, just as the myths associated with natural and other man-made features in the landscape survive in an attenuated fashion in the place lore of the Dinshanachus. Fascinating stuff. Thomas has observed, J. Thomas, the identity of place in Neolithic Britain. Thomas has observed writing of some Neolithic monuments in southwest Scotland. Hello, Neil and Mary, etc. And Mandy, all of you who are across the way, that, quote, durable monuments, principally those composed of earth and stone, had a mnemonic capacity. Their continued presence and reuse brought the past into the present, unquote. I love that. If the dates of these various, I'm just skipping on a little bit. Some recent burial places will have been credited to persons still in living memory, perhaps extending several generations back into mythical time. But the conception of a historical past was in all likelihood constrained in such a pre-literate society. As Mircea Eliade and others have reported, in such societies, the recollection of a real person or a historical event would survive in popular memory for 2 or 3 centuries at most, when the individual would then be assimilated into their mythical model, such as a hero. Snapper Earl is in the house. Fáilte, Snapper Earl. An event would be identified with a category of mythical action, such as a fight with a monster. Does he mention it? Should I dare suggest that he has missed it? Because maybe he mentions it later on about the Dagda killing the Mata. I'm not sure that he does. So he maybe missed an opportunity there. He's quoting Eliade from the Myth of the Eternal Return. And I have several of Eliade's books on the shelves. Again, something for a future episode of Book Talk, hopefully. However, it does not always follow that oral tradition becomes unstable or corrupt within a few hundred years. It can have a much longer historical dimension. This would appear to be the case among the Tlingit people of southeastern Alaska, for example, where tales such as the First War in the World, recorded early in the 20th century about a memorable early battle, relate events associated with settlements and places in the Dundas Bay region. Geological studies have determined that this area was available for settlement on glacial sediments at the quiescent glacier front shortly after AD 1000, but was engulfed by the advancing ice during the following Little Ice Age. The ice began to retreat sometime before AD 1794, and recent decades have seen the identification of settlements and topographical features referred to in Tlingit, T-L-I-N-G-I-T, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, in Tlingit oral tradition in this area. Fascinating stuff. And we have examples of indigenous Aboriginal mythology in Australia pertaining to mountains that are now islands out at sea that were separated from the mainland 60,000 years ago or something like that. Anne McCallum says, perhaps the story of Jesus being able to feed the multiple of his followers with a scant amount of loaves and fishes is reminiscent of the many myths of a near-ending abundance of food and drink. Sorry, never-ending. Yes, indeed, Anne, possibly, quite possibly. And we're all good, I think. Yes, we're up to date with the comments. Where was I? Yes. Yeah, I don't want to read much more, to be honest. And we've gone over the hour anyway. As the Indo-European roots, I've skipped quite a bit here. As the Indo-European roots of the creation myth of the river show, some mythic themes may have an especially long lifespan. As we shall see, archaeological evidence demonstrates that a belief in the heavenly voyage of the sun to the other world was a part of European cosmology for almost 2,000 years. Since the enlargement of Newgrange and the ceremonial activity there may have spanned a millennium, the river myth could have been grafted to the story of the mound many generations after its primary building phase when, however, the immense feat of its construction was still remembered. Interesting here now. It is quite conceivable. Mariana Dunn says, right pronunciation. Are you talking about Mircea Eliade? Desiree says, having trouble making comments as much tonight. My goofy husky insisting on napping on me, and he gets upset and moans dramatically every time I type on my phone. You think you could make Coda bark and wake his butt up? Yeah. Actually, Coda's been very quiet tonight. And as soon as I say that, I'm like, don't say that because he's going to start getting really loud. It is quite conceivable that figures such as the Dagda, whose epithet Olahar, the Great Father, is similar to that used of the Indo-European Father God, as in Latin Jupiter and Vedic Deus Pitar. Aengus and Boand, or their precursors, and events associated with them were a part of the beliefs of those who frequented Newgrange over a long time span. Aspects of their myths may well be incorporated in constructional and morphological elements of the monuments. Though difficult, if not impossible, to identify with any certainty, it is possible too that secret knowledge, solar concepts, and even such mythic events as the triple waves that created the Boyne are encoded into the Passage Tomb art. The answer to the question may always elude us, but maybe this primordial catastrophe is represented by the well-known spiral motif. Interesting observation there, John Waddell. Hats off for a great read. The creation myth of the River Boyne and the river's particular association with secret knowledge, assuredly has a bearing on the Newgrange tale. Just as the solar phenomena there, centered on the periodic penetration of sunlight, is reflected in the monument's association with the Dagda, who, among his various manifestations, was a solar deity and was also renowned for his wisdom and sexual prowess. Important medieval settlement has been recorded at Douth, and judging from the souterrain discovered at Douth, settlement took place there too in early medieval times. These locations, no doubt, give their inhabitants status and legitimacy. The attachment of souterrains to the northern tomb at Douth and to both the western and eastern passage tombs at Douth is much more than just evidence of domestic activity. The power of the other world was still appreciated in the early medieval period, and the attachment of a souterrain to a sacred place probably means that the practice of subterranean storage had a ritual dimension too. Etc., etc. Newgrange, however, was different and remained inviolate and undisturbed by Iron Age and early medieval settlement. As we have seen, Romano-British offerings demonstrate that it was a focus of votive gifts in the early centuries AD, that it was a place of occult deeds almost 1,000 years later, suggests that it was still venerated in medieval times. A great plague in 1084 prompted the following interesting entry in the Annals of Tirnach. A great pestilence in this year, which killed a fourth of the men of Ireland. So, folks, stay indoors, stay socially distanced, wear your masks, and you'll be fine. It began in the south and spread throughout the four quarters of Ireland. This is the causa causans of that pestilence, to wit, demons that came out of the northern isles of the world, to wit, 3 battalions, and in each battalion there were 30 and 10 and 2,000, as Angus Og, the son of the Dagda, related to Gilla Logan, who used to haunt the fairy mound every year on Halloween. And no doubt he's talking about Samhain, not Halloween. That passage is mentioned in my own book, Newgrange Monument to Immortality. It is particularly striking that half a millennium after the introduction of Christianity, some of the old gods were evidently acknowledged, and, even more noteworthy, that this Gilla Lugan should still apparently be a regular and persistent visitor to the otherworld mound of Angus at the great feast of Samhain, when he evidently communed with the son of the Dagda. Whether his visits involved entering the tomb, we do not know, but the Otherworld Hall of Angus evidently retained its potent magic in the 11th century, and we're almost finished now. Within a century or so, Newgrange would become a part of the extensive farmlands of the Cistercian Abbey of Mellifont. In time, it would acquire its present English name, the name of the ancient brew, dimly preserved in place names like Brough Park and the Ford of Brough on the River Boyne. However, the sacred knowledge that the mound embodied and the role the river played in its making would still survive in mythic guise in medieval texts. Newgrange is particularly significant, therefore, because it is an instance where there is some agreement between prehistoric archaeology and ancient myth. Both appear to tell a similar story about the creation and usage of the monument. And that is from Chapter 2, The Otherworld Hall on the Boyne, of Archaeology and Celtic Myth by John Waddell. One you will want, I think, to add to your collection. Now, if you give me one moment, I'm just going to very briefly see if I can find the link to the Waddell lectures. Yes, the Rind lectures. If you type in John Waddell lectures into YouTube, you'll see them all there. So I'll just paste that in and you'll see some of them for yourself. So Lecture 2 is called The Otherworld Hall on the Boyne. And that, of course, is derived from Chapter 2, The Otherworld Hall on the Boyne. So I'll paste that in as a link, and I'm sure that you'll all want to go and explore that when you're finished. Just briefly to say thank you, as always, for dropping in. It's been a very great pleasure to have you along in the library tonight. I should mention that the Mythical Ireland calendar, I'm told by the printer, I will have on Friday. I was hoping to have it early next week, but we are going to be ahead of schedule. If you want to pre-order it, all of those who pre-order it will be entered into a free draw for the book, The Field Names of County Meath. I'm just going to paste in the link where you can pre-order the calendar. And also, as usual, as always, to mention the patrons of Mythical Ireland at patreon.com/Mythical Ireland. And if you would like to become a patron, please drop over to patreon.com/Mythical Ireland. Take a look. Your patronage will be rewarded at different levels with different rewards. As of yesterday, there's a new video there pertaining to the cairns of Lough Crew, which is only available to patrons at, I think, the Bronze Age level and above. However, this stuff is generally released publicly eventually. The latest video available to view that was formerly a patron-only video is the one called Brone Trogan, The Earth Sorrows, and that is available. I will paste in the link as a comment here also. So there you go. That is the wonderful Archaeology and Celtic Myth. It is possible we might come back to that because there's a lot of material in it. And again, always bearing in mind the fair use and copyright, etc., etc. and mostly would encourage you to add it to your collection. And I know some of you are having the same difficulties as we've all encountered, which is when you see lots of more books arriving, you wonder where you're going to put them, and you're looking around the walls going, now, where can I put bookshelves this time? Remember, in my defense for encouraging you to buy all these books, there are lots of spaces in corners and on walls where you can put small bookshelves that will fit maybe 20 or 30 books. They don't have to be, these sprawling libraries, wall-to-wall libraries. Sometimes you can do it in a simpler and easier fashion. Anyway, a very good night to you all. Thanks for joining us for Book Talk. This is a regular... we haven't pinned it down to a particular evening, and I'd rather leave it like that, to be honest. It allows me to have a little bit of time in my own schedule to catch up with other work, such as the design and layout of calendars, the production of videos, the typing of blog posts, and of course, the writing of my books, among other things. But we'll continue to do this series. We'll be back with Live Irish Case next Monday, and I think what we're going to do is the next 2 episodes of Live Irish Myths will be about the festival of Samhain and the celebration of the beginning of winter in ancient Ireland. I hope you enjoy those. In the meantime, we may do another book talk. If not, I will do some sort of an impromptu live stream from the landscape somewhere within my 5-kilometer limit over the next number of days. So keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, remember, keep washing your hands and using hand sanitizer when you're interacting with people. Make sure you're socially distancing. Wear a mask if you're going anywhere on public transport or into shopping malls, etc., anywhere where there are going to be other people around. Please heed the medical advice of the practitioners who are at the moment in the wards and especially in the intensive care wards of the hospitals around Ireland and Europe and the world, are trying to save lives at the moment. Also remember to cough and sneeze into the crook of your elbow. Keep yourself safe and healthy. Most importantly, do so that you can keep coming back for Live Irish Myths and Book Talk. So it only remains for me to say slán go fóill, bye for now, ichawa, good night, or if you're in Australia, majinwa, good morning, or in the middle of the afternoon in the States, slán go fóill, ichawa. No, Tóg Bugé is always the last one. What was the other one? Slán go fóill, ichawa, Kulasov. Yeah, sound sleep if you happen to be going to sleep anytime soon. August, Tóg Bugé. Take it easy. I'm Anthony Murphy of Mythical Ireland. Thanks for joining us for Book Talk. We'll see you very soon, hopefully. Good night.